is a community full of rad people, a lot of weirdos. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like. People love skiing because it's such an incredible connection with nature. To have that sense of flow in the mountains.
Hey there campers, this is Maxwell here for the MEC. We are on a little exciting adventure today in that we are getting to go to the season opener for the winter. It's an event that they hold every year that really helps to get people excited about outdoor camping because it's a little easier to love the summer than it is the winter. But as someone that is an official winternato, I'm really excited for this whole event. So come along with me, it's going to be a really great time, and I'll see you guys outside. Bye.
Acknowledge that this event is taking place on the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, in the territories of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Wendat-Nayan-Wensio nations. This territory is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I also want to acknowledge, as an outdoor retailer, the ongoing presence of Indigenous and First Nations peoples on the lands in which we work and play, and we thank them for caring for these lands since time immemorial. On Wednesday this past week, we were in Montreal. We're in Toronto tonight, clearly, and then on Wednesday we move on to Calgary for our final show. So it's been an incredible tour so far, and a big thank you to you folks for coming out and supporting.
You guys, so cool to see such a packed room here at MEC. So thank you all for coming out. It's really fantastic to see all these faces. And I have to say at the start too, what a huge thank you to MEC and to Arc'teryx, folks at Yeti, everyone who's supporting us here tonight. We couldn't have these sorts of events without their support. And Caitlin is the most incredible human being. She's going to every single one of these events across the country. She's here and sometimes until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, cleaning up, getting the store ready to be a MEC store again the next day. I'm guessing you probably know a little bit about us and about the history, but I can dive into it a little bit more. POW was founded in 2007 by pro snowboarder Jeremy Jones down in the States, and he had spent his life, as pro athletes do, traveling around the mountains globally, spending a lot of time in the backcountry, thinking really carefully about risk and risk assessment and what the conditions were to keep everybody safe in those environments. And what he really began to notice throughout his career was that those environments, as Anna pointed out in the melting reminder, were becoming less and less safe and becoming less and less predictable, because the conditions would change from year to year. They'd change even throughout the seasons. And so that was what prompted him to bring POW together, to launch POW with the goal of really just bringing together the entire outdoor community. And POW Canada was founded in 2018. We're structurally separate from POW US, but we're, for all intents and purposes, the same organisation with very much the same sense of purpose.
Part of the Athlete Alliance at POW. I joined because I believe that athletes like us have a responsibility to protect the playgrounds which we love. I witnessed firsthand how climate change is affecting my expeditions. The melting glaciers, changing landscapes, and unpredictable weather are all stark reminders that our planet is in trouble. But you know what does give me hope? Is the power of collective action. When we come together as a community, we can make a difference. I've seen it happen and it's inspiring. So let's make the season opener not just about adventure, but about a positive impact. Let's work together to combat climate change and protect the outdoors we cherish.
I became involved with POW 5-ish years ago. We saw it as our role to educate the community about climate change and tell them, what's the difference between climate and weather, and sort of explain some of those concepts that I think probably now feel so familiar to so many of us. And it's so fascinating. We don't need to do that anymore. Everybody knows now about climate change. And so we've started to ask ourselves, well, what is our role when it comes to educating the community? And it's been really fascinating for me to see that one of our most popular courses that we run, or that we do as a webinar as well, is eco-anxiety. Because I think people feel so much grief and so much sort of a sense of hopelessness to see all of these changes unfolding in front of them and wondering if there's anything that they can do about it. And I think what I really like about it, the course is run by a POW volunteer who's a professional psychologist. And she talks about the fact that the absolute best cure for any form of, depression, anxiety, struggles, whatever label or emotion you want to attach to it, is to act. And that's grounded in cognitive behavioural therapy. If we sit there and we read the papers every day and we watch the news, we're going to feel overwhelmed. But even just taking a small action can be so powerful. And so I'm wondering, that was a long preface, but what actions do you two feel inspired to take, and do you feel like seeing some of these changes has pushed you to make even more changes in your own lives?
Yeah, like that eco-anxiety is very real. I remember the first year I joined as a POW ambassador, and I went to Fan Film Festival. We did a Q&A around the fire, and I was like, oh my God, the people are asking me what I'm doing to change the world. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of got freaked out, but one person isn't going to change the world, and it's, I think, all of us collectively doing our own small things that are. And some of the things I do in my everyday life, I really pick and choose the food I get. So like in the summer times, I get CSA boxes from the local farm up in Pemberton, and that's like a 15-week program, and I buy half a pig and a quarter cow every year and put it in my freezer. Just like that way, I know where my food's coming from. It's coming from 30 kilometers down the road, and it gives me, I feel like I'm really making a difference. I'm not getting my food from Mexico or California. I think those small things really make a difference when everybody steps in.
I think inclusiveness comes from understanding that it is something that impacts all of us, and we are all along for this journey together, and therefore it's important we bring each other along. It does not matter whether you spend one day in the woods here or talking to my friends and family and people that I'm around and see people actually take those steps for necessary action. Doing what they can to improve their carbon footprint every single day is pretty cool. Like, I've got friends who I would have never imagined would care 1 ounce of anything, and they're walking around with tote bags and reusable water bottles now. And I'm like, that is fantastic. You can still drive a pickup, but we'll work on that in the future. But I think there's just the ability to see it happen in the community, and looking out here tonight and all the different people that are here, that's the positivity of it all, is that we're in this together and people care. And there's as many people here because each one of you has brought one extra person with you, and that's them. That's it.
Yeah, there's just so many day-to-day things that we can do, and when
that common ground question too, that, you know, it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you sit on, if you even sit on it at all. You know, maybe you're a skier, maybe you're a hunter, but all of us spending time out in nature, it's kind of this thing that we have in common, and it opens up the doors to start having those conversations about climate and why these places are so special, why we want to protect them.
I think it's a big thing too is oftentimes we don't realize how much common ground we have with other people until you sit down and have a conversation with them. And once you start to connect the dots and really think about what you have in common with other people, you can bring them into your issues and what you're looking to achieve in the world. One of my best friends is a regular hunter, and for him it is the idea that wildlife populations and land management issues are resulting in him having less success when he goes out, and that means less food on the table for his family.
Some of you may have heard it's kind of occasionally surfaced in the news, but the government's been due to release new regulations capping emissions from the oil and gas industry. That's been consistently delayed. We're hearing a lot of rumours that it's being watered down because of industry interests. So we've been working pretty hard, a lot of background work, partnering kind of quietly with other non-profit organisations, but also as part of some larger public campaigns to try and bring some more transparency to that legislation and get it passed and get it across the line. So that's a really big one. A couple of others that we've worked on are trying to get certain chemicals used in manufacturing of outdoor gear banned in Canada. A lot of them are carcinogenic and pretty horrible for the environment. So we've worked a little bit on that. And some pipeline issues as well in the recent past. So yeah, if it's kind of relevant to our community, we're generally trying to act on it. Sleep is to start talking about finance. But for me, money truly makes the world go round. And when you change how people are incentivized to spend and invest their money, then you see change happen really fast. And I would really love to see Canada take a lot more aggressive approach on sustainable financing and trying to remove money from industries that are harming us. And that clearly has to be done in a sustainable way. There's jobs and economies at stake. We're not naive about that. But it needs to happen faster than what is happening now. And those industries are often primed to shift, but they just don't have any incentive to do so. As soon as you start taking their money away, that's a pretty strong incentive. Here where we're having direct conversation with members of parliament, members of the government. So our most recent one this year was the transit campaign. I'm sure everybody in this room has felt the pain of trying to get up to a ski area or a trailhead and being stuck in traffic for 2 hours. And that's the reality of the world that we live in at the moment. And we live in, unfortunately, a country that doesn't or hasn't historically prioritised public transit. So we commissioned a study, we work a lot with the University of Waterloo, to look at 5 key transit corridors to recreational destinations in Canada. And we worked out that we could calculate into the millions of cars how many would be taken off the road if they would open up some of those corridors to public transit. So we took that study to Ottawa. We spoke with 15 MPs over 3 days about the topic. The challenge, I would say, with probably all governments and the way all governments work is that they tend to rely on non-profits, not just to present them with the information, but to tell them what to do about it, and then often to go and do it. And we're a team of 7.5. We can't change public transit in Canada. And so what we really think about in our lobbying efforts is how can we be most influential, and at least being able to provide those studies and that factual information, particularly when it counters maybe some more self-interested arguments from other parties, can be really, really valuable. And to think about it in a way that's really win-win-win. We try not to be a partisan organisation, and something like transit just crosses those lines completely. I had the MP for Collingwood kind of basically jumping out of his seat, so relieved that someone had finally come to talk to him about transit, because getting around Blue Mountain area is such a nightmare. So yes, we absolutely do, and we're picky about how we do it because of our size. I mean, I'm a climate advocate because I'm a skier first. I was so lucky to grow up and be introduced to this sport, and I'm so lucky now to live in a country where I get the chance to do it all the time. It's the best. And this is a community full of rad people, a lot of weirdos. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like. People love skiing because it's such an incredible connection with nature, to have that sense of flow in the mountains. Just appreciate it. It's a respite from all the negative news that we hear in the world, but then use that to funnel your actions when you come back to the city and back to the real world. That's what I would say.
The future here is going to be centering Indigenous voices, especially as treaty negotiations continue on across Canada. For anyone who's not aware, most of Canada is treated out, except for practically the entire province of British Columbia, which is a massive amount of natural resources that's going to be determined in the next 15 to 20 years as treaty negotiations are entered into. And the intersection between First Nations law and environmental law really focuses on land as being more than just property. It's the idea that the Canadian government has the opportunity to recognize land as being something that has an inherent value beyond what you can extract from it. Specifically, it's the idea that land has rights, obligations, and duties, and that those rights can lead to instrumental change. Countries across the globe, like Bolivia, Ecuador, and New Zealand, have all assigned legal rights to actual natural ecosystems. There's a river in Colombia that if you dump waste into it, it will sue you and you will lose, because it has won every single case that it has ever filed. The Canadian government has been called to implement that as part of the right to a healthy environment for the last 10 or 15 years. There's a scholar out west named David Boyd who focuses all of his research is on this topic. If you have an interest in it, I'd check it out. But that's a policy work that I think is in the future. It's recognizing that there's more than one world perspective, and that when we implement that in the legal system and our policy work, it can lead to fundamental change that we could have never ever imagined. And we're not that far off from it, and I know it sounds like a wild idea that a tree or a river can sue someone, but like Walmart can sue whoever they want. And tell me what Walmart looks, smells, or feels like, because it's impossible to describe, but every single person in this room could tell me what a mountain, field, or stream looks, sounds, and feels like. So it's not that far off, we just need to push to get there.
We developed a Truth and Reconciliation Plan 2 years ago. We just updated it this year. What we're really trying to do right now is to develop meaningful relationships with the Indigenous communities in whose areas we live and work, and to involve them in conversations about how those lands should be stewarded and protected. We held, every year POW has an annual summit for our athletes and immediate kind of people who are involved with us. Last year we had a panel of Indigenous experts come and speak to us with their particular lenses. So we had one who is an academic, we had an Indigenous athlete, and we had an Indigenous lawyer. I'm trying to remember the third one. And so what they really helped us to understand was that it's not just a matter of kind of marching up to the Indigenous communities and saying, you know, hey, this is important, come and be part of it. There's so much time that needs to be spent in building trust. And one of the phrases that they use is 1,000 cups of tea. And you have to have 1,000 cups of tea with a community to earn their trust and respect, so that they will feel comfortable to work with you and to be a part of your world. So I think that's probably the phase that we're at now. We're trying to find out who is willing to have a cup of tea with us and to try and work out the best ways that we can work together. I would say that on the racialised communities front, we're less strong, and we know that, and that's something that we're really trying to think about and work with. We did a huge audit about 18 months ago of our image library to make sure that we're using much more representative images,
and trying to add people from all sorts of different backgrounds to our creative alliances and our athlete alliances, because we understand that just having those multiple perspectives is so critical. We have a fantastic athlete, Anita Naidu, professional mountain biker, who is just so brilliantly outspoken on the importance of inclusion in the outdoor community generally, and in climate action as well. And she's been a fantastic resource just helping us to understand what it is that we can do. So we're working on it.
It's going all the way down to the local level as well, where like the dude, I don't know, my neighborhood's called Northwood. Like my Northwood counselor knows me by name because I know him so much. And it goes down all the way down to like this little local connections too, that we are communicating with everyone that we possibly can to get the message heard.
I would literally just do this.
Oh yes, literally do that. I don't think the two of us could come from a more different background within competitive skiing.
Tom airing into the chute.
Freeride is about mastering the descent.
Skimo is essentially ski touring racing.
He's like a mountain goat up there just having a good time, and I'm white knuckled.
What's better for you in terms of being able to ski it fast? I just want you to be able to rip it. So cool. Whoa! Yeah! Let's go skiing.
It only proves to be an asset every time we step into the mountains together.
Be prepared for a little bit of wind loading coming off this right shoulder.
Yeah, buddy.
See you soon.
Bon voyage.
When you're young, you don't think much about the seasons. You just live them. As you get older, they attach to things in your mind and you anticipate their transitions. As I became a skier, the seasons began to have new meaning in a cycle dominated by winter. These periods that punctuate our year come courtesy of the Earth's elliptical orbit around the sun and the tilt of its axis, 23.4 degrees.
What did we learn tonight? I learned that there are more people that care about the environment like I do than I thought I did.
I learned a lot about the POW organization and the structure and the mission.
I learned that we need to work together in groups for a greater change.
Tonight I learned that it's all about progress over perfection.
I learned that, positivity can go a big difference, I think, into, accept that we cannot be perfect and we don't have to think that we are hypocrites for loving nature. I learned a bit more about what POW stands for and the activism that they do.
We could all do our part individually, but as a collective group, we could just contribute so much more.
That, there's a lot of climate activism that's going on, and it's not so hopeless. We have a lot of people that are in the community, and if we just stick together, it's gonna go well.
I just learned that I should join POW, and I just did it.
Our staff, to all of our athletes that came out today, so for Yuki and David, our POW team. So to our Terrence, Reddy, Osprey, Kula, Athletic Brewing, Sullivan, yes. And thank you so much for coming out. That was the end of our show. We'll see you next time.